Good evening. I call to order the Gladstone City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 14th. It's 6:31 p.m. The City of Gladstone is abiding by guidelines set forth in House Bill 2560, which requires the governing body of the public body, to the extent reasonably possible, to make all meetings accessible remotely through technological means and provide opportunity for members of the general public to remotely submit oral and written testimony during meetings to the extent that in-person oral and written testimony is allowed. Therefore, this meeting will be open to the public both in person and virtually using the Zoom platform. The Zoom platform instructions are written in the agenda of the meeting. If members of the public would like to comment on an agenda item, either virtually or in person, you were to have emailed your comments to the city recorder prior to noon today. Individuals attending in person may submit a speaker card, which is on the table at the entrance, to the city recorder prior to the beginning of the meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. The City Council will also have Gladstone City event announcements during the meeting and business from the audience at the end of the meeting. To speak during either time, virtually or in person, again, you were to have emailed Tammy Bannock prior to noon today with your name, topic of discussion, and city of residence. Individuals attending in person may submit a speaker card to the city recorder prior to the beginning of the meeting. Comments, again, are limited to 3 minutes. We respectfully acknowledge that the city of Gladstone, Oregon is situated on the traditional lands of the Clackamas, Chinook, and Kalapuya tribes. We honor and recognize the rich history, culture, and contributions of these indigenous peoples who have stewarded this land for thousands of years. We express our gratitude for the opportunity to live, work, and gather on these ancestral lands, and we commit to learning from the wisdom and resilience of the indigenous communities that continue to shape the region. As we move forward, let us strive to build relationships based on mutual respect, understanding, and collaboration with the indigenous peoples of this land. May we work together to protect and preserve the natural beauty and resources of this area, ensuring a sustainable and harmonious future for all who call Gladstone home. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Councilor Huckabee.
Present.
Councilor Alexander.
Yes.
Councilor Reichel.
Present.
Councilor Cook.
Present.
Councilor Roberts.
Present.
Councilor Garlington.
Here.
Mayor Milch.
Present. Please stand for the flag salute. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Administrator Betts, are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda?
I have none. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. We begin tonight with our consent agenda, which includes approval of the October 10 regular minutes, approval of September bank balances, the budget report for the period ending on September 30th, the approval of the September check register, legal costs on projects for the months of August and September, and the department head monthly reports for October 23rd. Then we'll move on to correspondence, report from Clackamas Fire District 1, and we'll have our city event announcements before we get to the regular agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it was moved by Councilor Huckabee, seconded by Councilor Alexander. Any discussion? Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Councilor Garlington.
Yes.
Councilor Roberts.
Yes.
Councilor Cook.
Yes.
Councilor Reichel.
Yes.
Councilor Alexander.
Yes.
Councilor Huckabee.
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the consent agenda is approved. I understand there's no correspondence. So next item on our agenda is the report from Clackamas Fire District. And we have Captain Michael Bauer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, staff and council. Some of you I know, I was previously the captain at the Gladstone Fire Station when Clackamas Fire started that contract for service. So pretty happy to be back here. It was about a year ago that I left that and went to a different fire station. So I'm here in place of Assistant Chief Brian Stewart and Fire Chief Nick Brown. They're at a retreat, planning retreat conference. So they asked that I could come back here and I was happy to do that. So what I like to do is I like to kind of talk about Gladstone specific things right out the gate, and then I'll kind of move to Clackamas Fire overall update. So Gladstone specific information, the Gladstone Fire Station had 136 calls for service. That's pretty much on track for all the previous months. It's a busy fire station. It's one of our busier fire stations. The positive thing here is 0 fires this month. So no fires within the city limits, which is great because this is the time of year that we start to see those fires kind of kick up due to a lot of things that I'll mention towards the end. We participated in the Goblin Gathering. Awesome this year. I did it the year before where it was raining and I couldn't believe how many people came out. And this year it was dry and it was still just crazy. So pretty cool. Even my kids said, hey, can we go back up and hand out candy and go through it? So just a real unique thing that your community does. And we were happy to be a part of it. So the guys pulled the fire engine out and did some fire engine tours and but it was just chaos as you could tell. The other thing that we participated in within Gladstone this year is Chief Stewart and I went to a reunification drill with the school district, the Gladstone School District. And what that is, just so if you don't know, is reunification is basically the process of if we have a natural disaster or we have a violent event or something happen at one of our schools, it's the process of getting the kids back in touch with the parents or the guardians in a way that is structured. Because as you can imagine, during chaos and those unfortunate situations, that's quite the challenge. So I'm happy to report that after going to that drill, you guys have some amazing people within the school district and within your law enforcement agency. We were able to, I was just super impressed about how proactive they are. They have a plan, coordinated to make that happen and be able to follow their plan to get that reunification process happening. And I was just impressed that the forethought in that. So pretty cool. We were excited to participate in that. And I think there's going to be more to follow. They're actually going to kind of do an actual hands-on drill versus a tabletop exercise. So we're looking forward to participating in that. And then of course, big news, congrats on the levy passing. Again, your community and the support that it shows towards fire and law enforcement is kind of unmatched throughout Oregon. And I'm involved in a couple other agencies throughout the state, and we just cross our fingers to barely pass. And you guys just really did awesome. So congrats to that. So district-wide, let's transition to that. We're gearing up for our Operation Santa Claus, which historically has not come through this community, but in case friends, family, community members ask about that, we do the surrounding communities. It's our 49th year of doing that. And essentially what that is we give Santa Claus a ride on our old fire engine and go through a parade route that's already pre-designated. And then in years past, we've collected food and donations during the parade. And this year, we're not going to do that. We're going to have some drop sites that you can take your food to or your toy and all that stuff. And those are all on our website. So if citizens or counselors, if you want more info on that, but it's just a really cool tradition that Clackamas Fire started. And you guys obviously have another kind of tradition with Pat McMahon and his old fire engine, and we're going to help him and participate in that as well. Those dates are December 7th, 8th, and 9th, those evenings. So you'll see a Clackamas Fire engine out with Pat and his old red fire engine too. So, and on that note, the fire station does have down here at the Gladstone Fire Station has barrels. So if you want to donate, that's a drop site and they will coordinate through the high school to distribute. So those toys and food and whatnot will stay within the Gladstone community. So, other things district-wide, the call volume for the entire fire district was 2,703 calls for the month. And while that probably is just a random number to you, it is a lot of calls for the amount of fire stations we have. It's up a couple percent from previous years, which is on track for everything that we do, and probably your agency with law enforcement and everything. It's just the calls for service are going up, which that's the world we're living in. So we're trying to do our best, and we're getting some staff trained up so we can upstaff some of our community fire stations so that we can keep providing that awesome service that that our citizens and contract cities have become used to. So that's great. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention our safety message for the month, because I think that's important. This month, we're talking about home heating and holiday safety. So as I said before, that the reason I was kind of impressed with Zero Fires is it's starting to get colder. And that's when we usually see furnaces kick on, portable heaters. We've seen everything from ovens, people using their oven to heat their house. So obviously, we're discouraging any of that, making sure that you don't leave your portable heaters unattended, your candles and all those things when it comes to holiday decorations, making sure that you have a good stable base. And if you're like anything up my house, making sure you don't do the Clark Griswold and overload with all your Christmas lights. Don't overload your circuits and your breakers, and making sure you have proper cordage and stuff. So that's the end of my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Well, thank you for the good advice about fire safety and
Yeah.
for the positive comments about the voters of our community. Glad to know that kind of support is maybe even a little unusual in the area, to know that it's as strong as it is. And I hope that other communities have as good a feeling, positive feelings about their first responders, both fire and law enforcement, as we do in our community. Are there questions from counselors? Counselor Alexander.
I just want to say Sean Olson came to the senior center a couple weeks ago and gave a fire prevention.
Yeah.
And it's on a thumb drive that can be seen now.
Okay.
And so we can get it. Michelle can send it to you or something, or you can ask about it. But it was really great, because what I learned on that was the biggest thing I've never even thought about: your dryer vent.
Oh, yeah.
That's where a lot of fires.
Yep,
start.
dryer
He was
vents.
telling us about that, and how you have to clean it out, and the drum that collects, and I mean, that I never even knew that. So I just thought other people.
Yeah, dryer vents and bathroom fans are a big cause of fires, because a lot of the older homes, like in this area, they don't have a timer for their bathroom fan and they just leave it on. Those get real hot. So super useful information. We're happy to participate and be a good partner with the senior center. They're really good people down there, and that place is just well attended as well. I can't believe how many people go there. So it's really cool to be able to do that. Any other questions? No?
Anybody else?
All right. Appreciate your time.
Counselor Reichel has a
Counselor,
question.
Counselor
All I
Reichel.
wanted-
Oh, yeah.
All I wanted to say was just thank you for being here. It's nice to see the back of your head. Thank you. Thank you for coming and giving the information. It's been great. So good to see you. Thanks.
All right. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Captain.
I was wondering, how many volunteers attended the first day of academy, or how many were welcome to that program?
I'm sorry, say that again. The volunteers for the what academy?
The Clackamas Fire District's newest volunteers on their first day of academy.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
17th?
I'm not sure exactly how many people, but I know they did start a new class recently.
Okay.
And our training division is just swamped, because we have career academies, we have volunteer academies, and then the place is bananas with how many people are coming in and out of there. So I'm not familiar with that, but I'll find out and I can get that back to you, because I think that's important. We do still have a pretty strong volunteer corps. I know this gentleman here, he's I was talking to him, Jack is his name? John, okay, he's telling me that before the meeting that he even put in a support services volunteer application, which is awesome, because those people usually are the ones that kind of bring us the rehab unit that when firefighters are tired, they can give us all the drinks and hydration and fill our air bottles. And there's kind of a place for everyone, no matter age or ability. We're trying to be pretty inclusive with that. So I apologize, I don't know the exact number. So, all right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Great information. Next on our agenda is Gladstone City event announcements. I know we had one request. All right.
Correct.
Dr. Bob Everett.
Bob Everett.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, counselors, Mayor Milch, Administrator Betts and Chief Schmerber. And I want to tell everyone how much I missed you last month because I was not here, I think, for the first time. And I weighed my birthday or here. And I'm sorry I picked my birthday. So that's for sure. But I also am very happy that both levies passed. And congratulations also, Commissioner Cook, on your victory. That's for sure. You know I'm here. I'm here for bingo. It's this Friday, as it is every third Friday of the month. As everybody knows, it's at the Gladstone Community Center now. So it's sponsored by our club, the Rotary Club here in Gladstone. We also, as I've mentioned before, bring in a outside nonprofit, and that nonprofit this month is Agave Dog Rescue. So I've asked them if they could bring a dog. I don't think that's going to happen though, which is too bad. But they will have pictures of their pets there, and it's certainly a worthy cause. There's no doubt about it. But doors open at 4:30. Bingo starts at 5:30. We serve food, drinks, and there may be, we are looking to, in fact, I'm going over to Bryce's after this, and we're going to be sort of changing up the games a little bit, getting a few more different ones with higher payouts, and just sort of see if we can't spice things up, which, it's time to change after a little bit over time, try to improve it a little bit. Also in this, I would like to push the clothes closet. Our club volunteers at the clothes closet. I know Vanessa, that's where I met Vanessa initially, was at the clothes closet. We're there once a month, and it is open every Saturday from 10 till noon. And they have a lot of clothes there. So anybody that's in need of children's clothing in particular, and children's and teens, please feel free to visit there and look around. They also welcome donations and too. We always enjoy our time there. Anyway, that's all I really have tonight. Thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions, I'm here for that.
I just want to say, I heard some people from the school community really praising last month's bingo event, because I think that was the one that helped to raise funds for one of the high school graduation parties.
That's correct.
And so every time you have a new group involved, you find some new people who haven't been to bingo before.
That's correct.
Who discover what a great way it is to have some fun while supporting a local project at the same time.
I also sponsored all my staff members, and they had a blast. We had a good time, so that's for sure. But you're right, that is correct. A lot of people have visited there, sort of seen. I've heard comments where somebody mentioned, a couple of people have mentioned that they've lived here their whole life and have never been in the community center. And that's the first time they've ever been in. So it does give some good exposure in a different way. But we did sponsor the senior graduation last month then too. So I'm trying to change it around a little bit. I may start repeating sponsors, or I should say nonprofits, over the next year or something like that. But we've got a pretty full calendar all the way up until we can have it in May, up until April. I don't think we're doing it in May. We're sort of weaning ourselves and learning a little bit too. But anyway,
all right.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Thank you. Questions from counselors? All right.
All righty. Thank you so very much. And
thank you, Dr.
We'll
Everett.
see a number of you out there. That's for sure. Good night. Off I go to work.
All right, we move on to the regular agenda. We have not a lot of items tonight, so we should zip through this pretty quickly. I'd say with my fingers crossed. We have an ordinance. We're considering an ordinance adopting new terms and conditions for continuation of an exclusive franchise granted to the Gladstone Disposal Company for solid waste, yard debris, and recycling services. Then we will consider a resolution for a supplemental budget adjustment to the budget for the biennium 2023 to 2025. We will have discussion on use of an opioid settlement funds for a behavioral health mobile crisis position in Gladstone. And then we will get a debrief from some of our counselors and staff who attended the League of Oregon Cities Conference. Then we move on to business from the audience and business from the council. So item number 9, ordinance 1527. Will staff present, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. So the City of Gladstone has a franchise agreement with Gladstone Disposal for them to provide garbage service in Gladstone. A couple months ago, we brought back to you some rate increases, and in meeting with Will from Gladstone Disposal and Pam and talking about that, they had asked if the city would be willing to consider an amendment to the current franchise agreement. Our current agreement expires December 31st, 2026. So the only section of the franchise agreement we are referring to tonight is Section 8. And on page 9-3 in your packet, there is a copy of this. And basically, I want to give you a little bit of history on why we're proposing this language. If you recall, back in 2021, we had a big winter storm. It accumulated a massive amount of storm debris in residents' yards. That was at a time when a state declaration of emergency was enacted, and Public Works, the police chief, the fire chief at that time, and myself, we decided to open up Meldrum Bar Park to allow a place for Gladstone residents to offload all of that debris. And it worked fantastic. And we had it open for several days to do that. In our franchise agreement, Gladstone Disposal hauled all of that debris away for us. And because there's language in our agreement that says they can't do otherwise, we weren't charged for that. That's good for Gladstone, good for the residents, not so good for Gladstone Disposal. They accumulated approximately $45,000 in fees that they had to pay in order to dispose of that yard debris properly. So in a good faith partnership, they had asked whether or not the city would consider amending the language. And so what City Attorney Jacobs and I had proposed, and it is in red underlined in your packet, is that basically the franchisee shall provide service to the city and to churches located within the city at no charge for routine services, provided, however, that exceptional service, which shall be defined as services for any single event with a cost of more than $1,000 for churches or $25,000 for the city, shall be charged at franchise then applicable rates. And when we were reviewing this language, City Attorney Jacobs and I were wondering why churches don't pay for garbage service in general. And that's not a discussion for tonight, but we do want to call attention to you as to whether or not this is something that you want to discuss in the future when we go through a new franchise agreement renewal. I did reach out to Will to see if he had any history on why churches were included in this franchise agreement and they don't have to pay for service. And we don't have a lot of information on that. So we certainly could dig further at a future date. But we wanted you to know that the current franchise already allows for churches to be included in this agreement. I reviewed the $1,000 and the $25,000 with our finance consultant and our public works director. Gladstone has never had an event that cost more than what it did in 2021. So there is risk to the city, but we think it's minimal. And we also believe that in the future, if we do have such event again, that the city would be able to be reimbursed through FEMA, which Gladstone Disposal is not. So that is what we're proposing tonight. The city attorney could add substance on maybe the $1,000 for the church's language that was proposed, or any additional questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Attorney Jacobs, is there anything that comes to mind that you'd like to add at this point, or do you want to just be open for some questions if they come up?
I'm happy to be open for questions. I would only point out that we use dollar thresholds to define an exceptional event rather than trying to define the different types of events, just because it was more simple for everyone to understand. There was some discussion about saying ice storms and tornadoes and earthquakes, but then we were worried about not including everything that we should include or being over-inclusive. And so we just figured using dollar thresholds was more simple for everyone. So that was the reasoning and rationale behind that decision. But otherwise, I think City Administrator Betts did a great job explaining this, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions from councilors? Councilor Alexander.
So to understand, Gladstone Disposal couldn't get reimbursed by FEMA, but a city can?
That is correct.
Okay, so anything that goes over 25,000, just to keep it simple, we'll take it, we'll bear the brunt, and then we'll get it back from FEMA.
That is correct.
So that's what we're doing for them to help
Yes.
them. Yeah, because I like that disposal service. They do a great job for our city. So if that helps them out, I think it's a great thing. Thank you.
Councilor Darlington.
Administrator Betts, you used the word fees, and the verbiage up here used rates. So I guess my question is, in that $25,000, is it just the fees, or is it basically what they would charge as a business cost of doing business?
I'm going to have Will go ahead and address that.
I think from our.
Would you like to come up front? This is Will from Gladstone Disposal.
I
Hi.
appreciate you being here. Thank you.
And push the button to make the mic come on. Thank you. There.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. From our perspective, we're really just concerned with being able to cover cost associated with an event like this happening, whether it's fees or rates. And obviously there is a difference between them. The rates are going to be a little bit higher than when I hear fees, I think of, the costs that we're incurring, primarily the disposal fees. There are other costs though, to run the trucks back and forth. But for us, the primary concern is just having some of those costs covered in the event of something big happening.
And I just wanted to make sure that our verbiage was correct in that it's just $25,000 over the cost of doing business.
So my understanding, as we've talked about it, is after the first $25,000 of cost incurred, that then we would bill at the franchise applicable fees or rates.
Yeah, so the city would get a separate bill for that.
Okay.
And so let's talk about a scenario. Let's go back through the Meldrum Bar Park scenario. Before staff would recommend opening up the park and allowing everybody to come there, we would have conversations with Gladstone Disposal about what approximately it might cost above the $25,000 for them to haul that away. So we would get an estimate before we made that decision, and then they would bill us separately for hauling that away.
Right. I think this is the way I'm thinking of it, is that I would like to make sure that your company is compensated, not just for the dumping fees, but that your employees and that sort of thing are all included in that $25,000, given the fact that, as Administrator Betts had said, that we would be able to be compensated should the federal government say we're, or the state people say that, we're in need because of dire straits. So I just want to make sure it's not just fees. I want to make sure it's
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the rates would cover, our rates, of course, they're set at in our cost plus a small margin. And so the rates would cover all costs associated with performing the hauls.
Okay, good to know. And then can I ask one question about that little church caveat? Is that dumpster or just trash cans?
So I would have to go back and look
Okay.
at the accounts.
Okay.
I'm assuming that there probably are both, depending on the size of the church.
Okay.
And we just don't know the history. I asked Pam about this, and she said that was a part of the contract when she acquired the Gladstone business from the previous hauler
Okay.
years ago. And so we don't know.
And
the
that's,
background.
that's okay. I was just asking that little question out there.
Attorney Jacobs, you had your hand up there for a second. Was there a response that you had to clarify any of this, or has this been made clear?
I think it's been made clear. I was just gonna explain the difference between fees and rates. And typically when we talk about fees within the franchise agreement, that's the fee that the haulers are paying to the city. It's their franchise fee for the right to do the business in the city, where the rates are what the hauler charges the customer. So the idea is basically that we use the term rates because that's what they would charge us, the city being the customer in these extraordinary events.
Okay, and I would just say that I think when Administrator Betts was explaining, the term fees also made reference to the fee that you have to pay when you dump things at another site. I had a tree that fell in my backyard and I wanted people to come out estimate what it cost to get rid of everything, and they said, well, you know, we'll charge you this much to cut it up and put it in a truck, but when we get it to the dump, we have to pay a fee. And they had to include that in their estimate. So I think that's part of what we're saying here is part of your cost of doing business is that you pay fees to the county or metro who operates the facilities where you dump things.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. One more question from Councilor Alexander.
Well, just interested now, did you guys, when you were doing that for us to help us out, did you not know that your company couldn't be reimbursed by FEMA? I mean, is that you were doing that out of good faith, but did you think FEMA would reimburse you? Or did you find out, was it a hard lesson to find out that FEMA doesn't reimburse the companies, only the cities? How's that work?
So, good question. I wasn't working with B&B at the time. It was
okay.
Alan who was the prior CFO, but my understanding is it might have been a little bit of a hard lesson. There was a hope that we would get some reimbursement, but we obviously wanted to provide the city service, so.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share that Alan and Pam, they did learn a hard lesson, but they never said anything for a long time because they care that much. And then when they transferred ownership, we thought this is a good time to try to clean this up. And I believe it's the same in Oregon City agreement as well. And it's really just to equalize it, but they did not complain about the financial hardship. As you recall, this was 2021, and here we are at the end of 2023 that we're making this change. So.
Well, and events like this, you know, with climate change, it's more likely that an event like this could happen again than we would have thought. So I think it's good to act proactively and prepare for this possible eventuality in the future. Any other questions before we take a motion on this matter?
Not a question, but I guess it sounds like there is a lot to dig into to kind of understand why that carve out for churches exists and what the history is there. So, you know, I don't want to take us off the rails by asking for more information now when we don't have all the information, but I think if we could just make sure to circle back to that once we do have a clearer picture, because I'd like to understand where those costs are currently being allocated.
All right, very good. Would anyone like to make a motion based on the staff recommendation on page 9-2?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 1527, adopting new terms and conditions for continuation of an exclusive franchise granted to the Gladstone Disposable Company for solid waste, yard debris and recycling services, specifically section 8 and reappealing ordinance number 1469.
Seconded.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Alexander and seconded by Councilor Cook. Any further discussion? Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Cook,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the vote was unanimous, so the ordinance is adopted and we don't need to do a second reading. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Mayor, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just looked back at the staff report and caught exactly what Councilor Alexander said. And I just want to be clear that the ordinance as drafted does not repeal ordinance 1469. So even though that was part of the motion, I would actually recommend that you sort of rescind that previous vote and just do a motion to adopt ordinance 1527, because we don't actually want to repeal 1469 because that made other changes to the ordinance that we don't want to repeal.
Okay, so it only repealed the portion that we changed, I guess, in a sense. But yeah, repealing does imply the entire ordinance. I understand that. So let's reconsider that then.
And in fairness to Counselor Alexander, that was staff that put that language in there.
And we just asked folks to read it, and I referenced the page and everything. So would the council be amenable to amending the motion to end at the words specifically section 8, period? You can all see it, I think, on page 9-2.
I say, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I just crossed it
All
out.
right,
I read that.
So Councilor Alexander, do you want to remake your motion with that change?
I will. yes.
Okay, I will just consider it made. Councilor Cook, are you willing to
Second that motion.
second that motion? Okay, let's take the vote again.
Counselor Cook,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the motion as amended has passed, so the ordinance passes. And thank you all for your help. Thank you, Chad, for keeping us and staff on our toes.
Good save, Chad.
Thanks for putting up with me.
All right, next item is item 10. Consider approving resolution number 1230, a supplemental budget resolution adjustment for the community center tram resource and appropriation. Staff.
Thank you. And speaking of keeping us on our toes, we have our finance consultant with us for this item to make sure that we are doing this supplemental budget resolution appropriately. So just a little bit of history in your staff report. In 2020, the Gladstone Senior Foundation purchased a Kia Sedona minivan for the community center to facilitate the transporting of a small number of seniors to and from medical appointments. That was in place of using the much larger bus that we have that seats 13. The van was then donated to the city and it became part of our vehicle fleet. In September of 2022, the city received grant funds from the Oregon Department of Human Services, Office of Aging and People with Disabilities to purchase enhanced transportation at the community center. The transportation needs increased and therefore the city purchased a 10-passenger van. The city sold the Kia Sedona minivan on the government surplus website, and the funds were deposited into the general fund to offset expenditures. Recently, the Gladstone Senior Foundation has requested that the funds from the sale of the minivan, which was $25,515, be allocated back to the foundation so that they can use those funds to enhance the lives of local seniors. They propose to use the funds to establish a foundation-administered program subsidizing tram trips for local seniors. They have been good stewards of the foundation funds, and the city's confident that the requested monies will be beneficial to the seniors in Gladstone. So it sounds simple. It's like, why can't the city just write them a check for $25,515? However, we need to do the appropriate supplemental budget to adjust them from the correct line items. And so Kathy's going to explain that for you.
Yes, as you know, with Oregon budget law, they are not very cut and dried about these. So under ORS 294.471, we need to increase our resources and also increase the appropriations. The appropriation under tram expense will allow us to issue that check for $25,000 and change to the foundation legally. It will increase the budget within the seniors or the community center so that we won't have a budget situation, overt situation. And we counter that with the revenues for tram trips, basing it on what the foundation is wanting to do, and we will see those revenues come back in through that tram revenue within the biennium. So that's what we're requesting tonight in order to keep us in balance.
All right, so this is one of those lessons we learn about budgeting at the city that's different from budgeting at home. If you get an unexpected influx of income at home, that's a great thing. But at the city, you have to account for it in your budget. And similarly, if you expend money in a different way than you budget it at home, sometimes we like to be flexible. We don't have that same flexibility at the city level, so we also need to include the expenditure side in our budget too. So that's the reason for doing it. We have the circumstances under which this has come up. Money that, an item that was originally donated by the foundation, and now they want to be able to have a say in how those funds are used to enhance pretty much the same kind of a purpose for transportation for seniors. So are there questions from councilors? Councilor Huckabee.
Thank you. This is just kind of a side question. Do we still have the bus that seats 13? And then we also have the van that seats 10?
Yes, so the
Okay.
bus that seats 13 is through rideshare with Clackamas County. That's the big one. And now we have the 10-person adventure van.
Does the city own the rideshare van?
The city receives grant funds from it and we're required to maintain it. But Kathy, I'm not sure, does the city actually own it?
I believe we do. I would
Okay.
have to double check the asset inventory to be sure, but I believe we do.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
I motion to approve resolution number 1230, a supplemental budget resolution adjustment for the community center tram resource and appropriation.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Cook and seconded by Councilor Huckabee. Any additional discussion?
I just have one thing to say. I would just like to remind our audience, anyone that's watching, that the Senior Foundation has been with Gladstone for a long time. They are good stewards of our senior population, and they have helped maintain what used to be called the Senior Center building in a grand gesture. They're kind and good people that do nothing but promote kindness towards the people, senior people in our community. And I hope that no one would question this. Their efforts are always honest.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that commendation of that group. And I wholeheartedly agree. All right. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Cook,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the resolution passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is to consider the use of National Opioid Settlement Agreement funds toward a mental health services coordinator position in Gladstone in partnership with Clackamas County Behavioral Health. Administrator Betts, if you'll introduce this and any staff or guests involved that will be helping us.
Okay, thank you. We have our police chief, John Schmerber, and we have Stacy England, who's the LPC Mobile Crisis Program Supervisor with Clackamas County. And just to give you a brief overview, you have a comprehensive staff report, and the reason for the length of the history is because this is really a carryover project from the previous city council. And I've been able to keep you up to date on the National Opioid Settlement Agreement funds that Gladstone is participating in receiving that. We have some settlement figures to date. There are some future settlements that we're still expecting, but I wanted to be clear that as we engage in this conversation, we are only talking about committing cash that is in our bank account right now in the amount of $51,000. So basically, local governments throughout the country filed lawsuits against various opioid manufacturers and distributors due to their actions that resulted in an uncontrolled and misleading distribution of millions of addicting opioid pills. We all know that we have a crisis in the nation regarding opioids. So for the last year, since August of 2022, we have been having public conversations on what should we do with Gladstone's opioid settlement funds. And that last conversation in October 22, the city council provided staff guidance to move forward with an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County to collaborate on using Gladstone settlement funds. And basically, our funds would go to the county and they would use it to focus on mental health, housing for detox, and reducing the supply of opioids countywide, so not Gladstone specific. Tonight, what we're asking for is a little bit of a different approach, and so I will have our police chief go ahead and discuss the proposal.
Good evening, council, mayor. The Gladstone Police Department has developed a strong relationship with Clackamas County Behavioral Health Division, specifically the mobile crisis team, and at times the caseworkers within the unit. Although the partnership is strong, there remains limited resources to address mental illness and addiction. In most law enforcement encounters, we find that mental illness and addiction are not exclusive of one another. A few cities within Clackamas County have hired their own mental health clinicians or caseworkers to help deal with this issue within their jurisdiction due to resource availability. The Gladstone Police Department has responded to 112 calls for service between October 2022 and October 2023, which have been identified as someone in crisis involving mental health, addiction, or a combination of both. These complaints typically involve repeated calls for service, and the city recognizes that the Clackamas County Behavioral Health has an established program which can benefit the Gladstone community. Therefore, staff proposed that we use the opioid settlement monies directly towards the hiring of a mental health service coordinator who is dual certified in mental illness and drug addiction in partnership with Clackamas County Behavioral Health. This would be a 2-year pilot project starting when the county hires a qualified person in 2024. The mental health service coordinator would be housed within the Gladstone Police Department. Sorry, I have a lot of paperwork on this. Would be housed in the Gladstone Police Department with the ability to interact with officers, respond to calls of service, conduct follow-up, and provide proactive outreach to assist those with addiction in crisis in hopes of reducing repeat calls for service. Although the use of opioid settlement money is specific to addiction, having a dual certified coordinator allows for getting immediate resources activated to provide appropriate care to the individuals. The current monies received from the opioid settlement will not cover the costs associated with the hiring a full-time mental health service coordinator, but Clackamas County Behavioral Health is committed to offset the remaining costs of the position, and the city will also provide in-kind service such as office-based transportation and communication. So in working with Clackamas County, the department head, and I think Stacy England here will also speak to this a little bit. They're moving forward with trying to get authorization for this. So their half is still up in the air. However, they've got strong support at this point. So I'll go ahead and turn it over. Any questions? Stacy England's here also to answer any questions.
So we don't have an IGA to adopt at this point. We're trying to get approval of the concept to move forward to get to that point.
That's correct.
Okay.
We have a rough draft of a scope of work and how it would look, but nothing's been finalized yet. We're just looking for the direction in order to move forward with it.
All right. And Ms. England, it'd be great to hear from you on this issue as well.
Yeah. Do you have specific questions? Or you want me to just talk a little about how we envision it?
Look, Counselor Cook, why don't you start with your question?
Sorry, I've got a burning question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, prior, I feel like we considered the former approach where I think at one time we were talking about hiring someone for 2.5 days each week, right, Chief? So this is an evolution of that idea where my big question when we were considering 2.5 days per week is, gosh, I hope everybody has mental health crises on the Tuesday through Thursday that we have someone present. So just to clarify that this solution is an evolution where we would have that full-time person dedicated and that cost would be offset by Clackamas County to allow us to get that higher level of coverage and care for the community.
Yeah, so you all so I supervise a county-wide resource called the Mobile Crisis Response Team, and we work everywhere. So anytime there's a crisis, law enforcement, anyone from the community can call the crisis line, and we'll triage and see if a mobile response is, if that's the best response, if there's other things we can do, and we'll send a team out. We work 24 hours a day. And so in that way, we already partner with Gladstone Police to be able to provide some of that on the spot crisis support. What this position would give you then are people who are frequent callers or people who need intensive follow-up to be able to connect to the next level of care, because we really are a crisis focused team. What we're working on is building a more of a continuum of care and being able to provide wraparound intensive support to some of the individuals in your community, specifically who are experiencing opioid or substance use disorder, but also mental health. And so this person, that's where the dual certification would come in. This person would be able to assess for both. They would work closely with our crisis team, but they would be embedded within the police department and be able to provide that intensive kind of like hands-on care and actually prevention work that the crisis team doesn't. So it wouldn't even necessarily have to rise to the level of a crisis. It could just be like, hey, you seem like you're having a hard time. I ran into you at the bus stop. Can you want to chat? I mean, it wouldn't have to like necessarily get to that point.
And you mentioned, them essentially being called in through a mental health line. Would there ever be a situation where, I'm driving down the road and I see someone in crisis at a bus stop? If I call Gladstone PD, would Gladstone PD be able to dispatch, or what would that, I guess, how would that referral and dispatch process look?
I think we would have to work that out because we do want this position being embedded in with law enforcement. We would want them to have first access. So anyone can call the crisis line, like I said, and we have the county-wide resource, but then working directly with that person. So we have a clinician stationed in the city of Wilsonville right now. We don't have direct access to her because law enforcement keeps her really busy. And so we direct the community to use the community resource, and law enforcement works most closely with Brenda, that's her name. And so depending on the flow and what we work out, I think we would have to decide how that direct access would be so that they have enough protected time to really support law enforcement.
I think to answer your question too, we have to consider safety of the individuals, the caseworkers or clinicians. That's why 911 is typically the call that we get, and we would respond and then get the appropriate resources out there. Or if that person is working during that same shift, would likely respond also.
Would that decision be made at, when someone calls 911, would that dispatcher be making that decision of where it goes, or would you within the police department be able to make that decision about where to flow that?
We can flow. Typically, we would show up first regardless.
Okay.
We would always show up, and then hopefully there is a clean pass off, and then free up our officer to do other things or stand by and assist. We're a professional with a lot more experience than we have. We'll be able to help the individual and provide the appropriate care.
Cool. Thank you.
Kind of to add on that, one thing we have seen in other cities as well is that sometimes we have frequent callers that can be sent directly through because we know they already have a relationship with that person who works there, and that is the best person to respond. And so that is worked out again in collaboration with the law enforcement team to be like, okay, you're working with Joe. Every time Joe calls, we'll let you know.
And I think we've seen that at Tequila is an example of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm glad to know that you're developing these models and learning from them and growing and expanding your commitment to it because as you do, just the kinds of situations you described tells me that you're moving in a direction which will provide that continuum of care that you described, not just a crisis intervention, one-on-one, but something that looks at the bigger picture. So I appreciate the county's commitment to this and looking at it this way. Councillor Huckabee, you had a question.
Thank you. I might have a couple. This is great. First of all, I'm really excited about this. At the end of the proposal, I did see a sentence here, which I just caught. It says, this would be a 2-year pilot starting when the county hires a qualified person in 2024. What say does GPD have in that person if the county is hiring them?
They would absolutely be involved in the hiring process.
Okay.
To the degree we talk about it, sometimes, we'll talk, sometimes I do a first round interview to screen out if they just have the basic knowledge. And then I bring them to our law enforcement partners and say, okay, these 4 people have shown they at least, they meet the minimums. So then we work together drafting the questions, like from the very beginning, what do we want to see that would make this person successful? How do we draft the questions together to help draw that out? And the hiring is completely collaborative.
Okay. Some things that I personally would like to see in our city in coordination with this is Narcan specific training, which for instances of talking about that, Narcan is synonymous for naloxone, which you guys will see in the paperwork. Will we have some way of doing that, distributing or training specifically in our community?
Our team does distribute and administer when needed. And so this person, being sort of an extension of our team, would have access to naloxone to carry with them and to distribute.
And would training be available for anybody who wants it?
We can arrange that through public health, probably, if you were interested in having a training here.
Okay, perfect.
I think to clarify the question, are you asking it, can we distribute Narcan to the community members or just through?
Well, training for one and availability.
So.
Yeah, so our county public health has been giving out naloxone to different agencies and also like wound care kits and other things. So I could definitely connect anyone here to them to be able to do like a big training and also to get you kits.
That's like music to my ears. Thank you. And I am familiar that Milwaukee has a similar role with their PD, and I don't think it's through the county. I think it's just through Milwaukee Police Department, a highly qualified individual over there. And I was wondering if, we've tapped into that resource. Be like, hey, how's it working over there?
Yes, I've talked to the chief quite a bit regarding that, and he recognized that we didn't have a caseworker clinician that we were, with the mobile crisis team, depending on their availability at the same time. And he's always offered the individual's assistance to us. So if we need it, but I'm very careful about how often we want to use this individual because Milwaukee is actually paying the full freight for that person.
Correct. Yeah. I wonder would it be worthwhile to explore even him and the chief coming just to give a presentation to us of how that's looking for their city? Maybe. Maybe.
I can ask.
I think it would be great. I mean, none of us are familiar with it, and Milwaukee has this great program out there. So just kind of nice to hear from somebody who's living it in their city. Yeah. I think that's it. All I have. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Alexander, you said you had a couple questions.
Yeah, one is I like to keep things simple. So if this is great, I think good program, but and so we either give the money to Clackamas County and they do whatever they want with it, or we get someone that sits here and works directly with our city. That's almost a no-brainer. And my other question would be then 112 calls. So you've got this person it's a resource in our community. I think they have just about as many calls from the fire department. Would you be able to work with the fire department when they go out on a mental crisis or an opioid or a drug overdose? Would that resource be available for our fire department?
Typically it's a dual call. If it's a person in crisis or an overdose, we're typically on scene with them also.
Okay.
Sometimes if it's an overdose, they arrive first, then we show up, vice versa.
Okay.
So all that information gets passed on during debriefs or briefings, what would be with this individual.
So everyone would know the Clackamas
Everybody-
Fire, the police department would know
Everybody would
about the individual situation. That's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Counselor Garlington.
That's okay. So just a couple of quick questions. Number one, I'd like to say thank you for being proactive on our end for Gladstone to come to the table already saying, we're really interested. And I think that that goes a long way. Your work to get this program going and your help to bring us to the table and be able to, for us to be able to say, we're already here, just let's go. My only question would be for Kathy Brucker is that, or even Administrator Betts, let me understand, we are writing a check to your program, and your program is actually hiring the person, and Chief Schmerber is housing that employee in his facility. Have I got that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if the council decides to move in this direction, a contract would come back to you for consideration that would have all that language in it.
I just have one more then. So this wouldn't be a city employee. It'd be a county employee. So we wouldn't pay any benefits or PERS so that county would handle all that. Thank you.
And I had a question on the funding. Now, these are opioid settlement funds. And I know that there is a growth in crisis situations related to the use of opioids. But I understand from things that I read that in some communities, maybe not this one yet, but hopefully not too much here, methamphetamines, cocaine, some of these other kinds of drugs are also causing these same kinds of incidents. So are we restricted in what we can use opioid funds for in our police work or mental health support work? And then this is another question for Kathy Brucker. We're anticipating that there may be some future awards that have not been finalized here. How have we budgeted for this? Did we budget based on only those settlement funds which we are now expecting to receive, or will this be a situation where we may need to do like what we just did with the other supplemental budget adjustment? So I'll let Kathy answer that question first, and then I'll go back to the question about specific requirements for opioid funds. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding the specific use of opioid funds, there are very definite restrictions on it, and it must be opioid related. There's a number of avenues that you can go through, but it is all relating back to opioid addiction. There will be reporting standards that we have to do. We did have to start doing those this month as far as how we are utilizing the funds, or this year. And it is also too on a first in, first out basis, as far as there has to be a spend down of funds within 5 years. The first funds you take in must be back out within 5 years. So there are several restrictions financially that are going to be associated with this. Regarding I'm sorry, your second question?
About the supplemental budget, have we
Thank you.
budgeted only for what we're expecting, or are we anticipating perhaps more?
We have budgeted for only an estimate for the year. Basically, when I did the budget and formulated the dollars, it was strictly an estimate. Something that, again, we watch as far as if it is going to be expended, and it is more than the funds that we have appropriated, then we will do a supplemental budget adjustment to increase the revenues, increase the expenditures. Needless to say, we won't be expending more than what we have in actual cash in the bank.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Any additional comments regarding the question about the restriction on the opioid funds?
I think that substance use, I mean, you don't know what someone's using until you meet with
Right.
them. So any kind of assessment you're doing is pretty open. And I also know that fentanyl in particular is showing up in a lot of different drugs now.
Yes.
Even stimulants. People who are using methamphetamine are finding it laced with opiates and other things. And so I feel really confident that the proposal that we put together meets the requirements of the opioid settlement money. I mean, we are asking for our county to use opioid settlement money to make the position a whole position as well. So
Very good. Okay, that answers my question. Chief, anything?
Nothing. Thank you.
Okay.
Counselor Reichel has a.
Yes, Counselor Reichel, you had your hand up. I'm sorry, I cut in front of you. Go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. No problem. Mine is just maybe more of a general question, kind of piggybacking on Counselor Huckabee's question. So are there similar positions currently in our surrounding cities like Estacada, Oregon City? Do they have a similar position already? Or would we be assisting with that kind of call out for those cities at this time if we move forward with this program?
So what I do know is Lake Oswego, West Lynn, Oregon City, Milwaukee all have mental health clinicians. I'm not sure, I'm not aware that they're dual certified with addiction. Maybe Stacy is, but this would be the first dual certified because we're using opioid money and we need certain requirements. The benefit behind that is that if we find that the person is not an addict, opioids aren't the issue, and it's clearly just someone in crisis with mental health, they got direct access to get help there right away. So that's the great piece about the dual certification and the resources having the county with us.
So with our dual certification position, would this person potentially be called in to support in other cities within the county in these specific instances? I hope that makes sense.
and that would be up to our partnership. Right now, we're thinking, I mean, this position would belong to Gladstone. So any movement outside of that area would require a conversation.
I think I'll answer this question generally speaking, is that we help one another out constantly, whether it's Oregon City coming into town, us going into Oregon City, or an unincorporated Clackamas County, Milwaukee, we help each other out. So if there's a need, we'll send resources, just like they would send resources for us. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, and it's what I wanted to hear. So thank you.
All right, Counselor Roberts, you had a question or two.
I just had a single question for Stacy. I wanted to know, is there a vast number of people out there in the hiring pool for this position, or is that an issue right now, seeing as we're looking at hiring further ahead in 2024?
Great question. That's an issue. That's why we don't have a date there. It's been really difficult to hire in healthcare, and we would be looking for a high level of expertise. And so I would anticipate that, well, I don't even want to guess, but I would guess we're looking at probably a 3 to 4 month minimum hiring process.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Counselor Roberts. That was one of the things I wondered about too, because we know that in hiring in police, that's more of an issue right now. In fire, they seem to be doing pretty well, adding people with the academy, but we've seen disruption in employment and workforce issues across a range of types of jobs in recent years. And so this is something we'll keep in mind. Hopefully all the positive things that we've said tonight about our own community and its support for law enforcement and first responders will make that small a pool of people look to Gladstone first as their intended place to work. We can hope.
One more
question from Counselor Alexander.
Counselor Roberts brought it up. It made a good point. So if it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months to hire and we finally get the person, is that when the 2 years starts? It doesn't start in 2024. Okay, that's what I wanted to make.
All right.
hopefully we're hiring in 2024.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
I
be a
hope
whole
so.
year.
Yeah, I
Yes.
definitely want. I just-
But it doesn't start January 1 if we don't hire January
Yeah,
1.
that's
Yeah.
why I didn't know, you know,
Yeah.
you said for 2-year pilot project.
Right.
Does it start now and then we gotta hire the person and
Yeah.
5 months goes by, you know?
No, it takes a good solid 2 years to really get something up and running. You know, you have to build the community up, get them to know it, get people to use the resource, and get the person trained and familiar with the community. And so, you know, I think starting that 2 years at the date of hire is really important so that we can really evaluate. We have enough time to evaluate it.
Perfect.
Councillor Huckabee.
One thing that I did a breakout session in when we went to the League of Oregon Cities Conference, and Administrator Betts and I both attended the Connecting the Dots to Behavioral Health. And it was very evident in that that course that behavioral health practitioners are, it's like a critical level right now. And a lot of that is how are you going to retain them? You know, the benefits you're going to offer, like it has to be really competitive. So I hope the county can offer that. And then I had a call out actually from the Gladstone PD's report. It's kind of a shout out to you. It looks like back on October 27th, we had actually partnered with you and a behavioral health worker came out to work with a suicidal juvenile in our city. And it seems like that had a good resolution. So thank you for possibly saving that child's life. And then this one's actually for Chad. Hey, Chad. You may or may not know. I know that there's so much information out there about this. Do you have any idea when Purdue's going to settle? Like, is it on the horizon? Are we talking about it?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. It's a big one, so hopefully the funds will be big as well.
Well, I'm not sure what action you're asking for the council tonight. You're talking about providing direction. Do we need a motion or I'm sensing agreement among the council to proceed with this.
Then I think we're fine. We just needed to get a consensus from a majority of you to move in this direction. And then when we can work through a contract and City Attorney Jacobs has had time to review it, as has County Council, we will bring it back to you.
Okay, am I reading that correctly? I'm seeing heads nod, so I think we're seeing a consensus from council. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Ms. England, for coming tonight and sharing this with us. And thank you to the county for making this opportunity available. All right, and Councilor Huckabee sort of helped to introduce this next item on our agenda. She and Councilor Garlington and Administrator Betts attended the 98th Annual Conference of the League of Oregon Cities, which was held last month in Eugene, Oregon. And as Councilor Huckabee alluded, that included some courses, discussions, workshops, breakout sessions, whatever you want to call them. So we decided we would give an opportunity tonight to hear back from things that that you learned, that you were excited about, that might bode well for this city. So I'll let you go in whatever order you'd like. Who would like to start?
I can start.
All right, Councilor Garlington.
So I wrote mine out because otherwise I start to babble. So I don't want to do that. First, I'd like to thank the city for the opportunity to attend the event, much like the Clackamas City's dinners, the extra meetings we all attend, and the learning events we go to. I know these outreach opportunities make us better informed counselors. The opening speaker for the small cities reminded us to think about the next generation, not the next election, to think about what you want your city to look like in 20 years, and always think about the impact of your decision on the generation to come. My first small session was 10 tips to successfully passing a local option levy. I know that our police and fire levies were already on the November ballot and in capable hands of the voters, but I wanted to hear about how other cities had levies that didn't pass and why they thought they didn't work. I'm just chalking this one up to calling it future learning. I can tell you this, Gladstone staff did it right. Another session I did was in community engagement. And the biggest thing that I learned from that was to meet people where they're at. we as counselors can't assume that sitting here at the dais is reaching everyone. And they talk about going to senior meetings, sporting events, churches, schools, nights out, service fairs. The list goes on, but you can understand the need to be present where the people are. The other item discussed was to build trust with your community. And I know that as a council, this is my third year, and I know that the word trust has come up so many times, and we want people to trust us. Our former council wanted people to trust them as the people before them. It's an important part of our city that that Gladstone's community, being the kind of community that we are, I believe that that's just really important because we live here and we live in a very small space. I did a session on council compensation. And I'm not sure, I know why I went into this because I knew somebody that was part of the panel and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. And I sat down thinking to myself, we don't get any money, not a big deal. Why, I just wanted to hear what they had to say. After listening to this session, I can give you 3 things that I thought were really relevant and I never thought of before. Number 1, for some counselors who are asked to do more than we are, for instance, Wilsonville counselors spend 20 to 40 hours per month in council activities. Some cities hold meetings during the day. And so all of those positions are more like a part-time job rather than a small volunteer position. And I'm not downplaying what we do. All I'm saying is that there are more cities that do far more hours than we do, as expected from the position. The other was to draw more age diversity. Young families would require daycare. Older families might need elder care to attend meetings. If this is the reason for someone not to get involved, there is a way around it. Diversity is important on many levels. And I believe that we've talked about it on our council that we want to see that. And so I guess the question is, what are you willing to offer to make that happen? Just a thought. And also the cost of doing business, an iPhone, an iPad, parking fees, gas money, pens, pencils, paper, etc. What a city requires and what does it or does it not supply? So those were reasons that I never thought of to why to compensate a city councilor. I'm not asking for it in Gladstone. I just want people to understand this is why other people are seeing this. I'm not saying it can't be asked also in the future. If that's what this council does, that's what this council does. So our Thursday night keynote speaker was Bill Strickland. He is the author of Make the Impossible Possible, One Man's Crusade to Inspire Others to Dream Bigger and Achieve the Extraordinary. He is a community leader and the person blew me away. LOC president and Hillsborough Mayor Steve Calloway once said, leaders can pretend to care, but they can't pretend to show up. Bill Strickland showed up, saw what needed to be done, and he did it. He has opened numerous facilities to promote vocational education to the youth in and around Pittsburgh. He has expanded beyond Pennsylvania and even has a center built in Israel, which at the time of the conference, he didn't know if the building and the students were even there. The address brought me to tears and I was truly moved. I was then lucky enough to get to chat with him at the mixer later that evening, and I listened in while others asked questions, and honestly, I just wanted to be in the presence of someone who had a calling, prayed about it, and made it happen. Then on Friday, I was asked to host a breakout session, and in advance of what I'm about to say, I'd like to thank our mayor, who after a council meeting said to me, Mindy, you got this. You knew what happened. You worked on it. You got this. I'll admit I was still a little nervous, but I went ahead and I sat down with 2 people on our panel, Mayor Ted Wheeler of Portland and a gentleman by the name of Benoit Jacob. And he was the director of the Community Development Institute and at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And he actually was born in Canada and had an incredible resume that he talked about very, very lightly, but I'm sure it was much better than what he had said. So I just want to read my opening statement to what I read, what I did. We got to speak for like 15 minutes and I came in at like 14 minutes exactly. So systemic change occurs when change reaches all or most parts of a system, thus affecting the entire system. A system is a set of things working together as part of an interconnecting network, an organized framework or method, the whole thing. Every decision you make as a counselor is guided by a system of rules, ordinances, and your charter. Those are the documents that make your decision-making seamless because you have defendable documents guiding your decisions and votes. These documents were, are, and will be created to keep your city system moving forward, thinking forward, and hopefully creating a future with policies and procedures that keep up with changing times. So then I went on to talk about, of course, praising our staff and our legal team for guiding us through that process that you and I were both part of many moons ago. I was heartbroken to see how many people sitting in our audience were asking us for help. How do we get people to understand this needs to happen? Our last charter was 1975. We haven't done changes or updates in our policies with our employees in how many years? How do you get that started? All I can say to staff and our legal team is thank you. Thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrow. So then I'm part of the LOC Women's Caucus, and part of the 3 days that we were there, I attended the annual meeting. I was reelected to the board, and then I helped facilitate a mixer that included the Women's Caucus, the People of Color Caucus, and the DEI board. The Gladstone staff put together a prize bag personalized from Gladstone for one of the prizes at the mixer, and the person that won it, I watched her open it, and she was so excited to get the canine dog in it. She was super excited about that. So I would like to once again say thank you for the opportunity to attend. It was worth my time, and I hope that Gladstone citizens feel like furthering our education, so to speak, as being a counselor is worth their money, their tax dollars as well. So thank you again.
Thank you, Councilor Garlington. And, you know, those cities who haven't updated their charters or some of their policies in many years, sometimes it's because they lack the kind of people, the kind of people that you are, one who is committed to seeing that happen. And you put a lot of time into 2 different charter reviews over the last several years, and learned a lot from that, enough to share very effectively in that seminar that you participated again alongside the mayor of the big city to the north. So thank you for representing us so capably there.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Huckabee. Administrator Betts.
Oh, go ahead, Counselor Huckabee.
I don't want to repeat anything, and we went to some of the same, so go ahead.
Well, city managers attend because they want to know what elected officials are being taught. And it's also enjoyable to go with an elected official as you go through these trainings together, and to meet various elected officials from all over the state of Oregon that want to know, what are you doing in Gladstone, and asking them the same question. So if there were 2 quick things I could highlight for you, the one that I found the most value in was called Financial Management and Budgeting: How to Maximize Existing Revenue and Look for New Sources. And at this session, there were various cities, different sizes in Oregon, that went through and talked about all the proposed taxes or fee increases they were trying to get passed to increase their revenue. Because of measures 5 and 50, we are very limited on how we creatively get more revenue to provide the same level of service. So I heard things like increased TLT, which is transient lodging tax, from 9% to 12%. increase gas tax in a city from 3% to 5%. Gladstone doesn't have a gas tax that we impose. $15 per month fee that goes towards police, fire, and parks. Dog license fee, real estate transfer tax, sales tax, vacancy tax. And the whole theme of this seminar was really discouraging because it feels like all we can do is tax or fee residents to increase our revenue. And so one of the takeaways for me in this is I'd really like the federal government to allocate more funds like they did with ARPA without needing to apply or compete with each other, because that's what we're doing with grants. All the municipalities are competing for that. The local level knows how to spend the funds and get projects done. And I think that they should let us be accountable for how that money is spent. I also wanted to share that I wouldn't say it was good to hear this, but there was a larger city, almost 3 times the size of Gladstone, that their levy failed, and now they're looking at significant cuts to programs and $9 million that they have to go through and try to find those cuts. So it's not just small cities that are having issues with revenues. But my biggest statement that I made is Gladstone's trying to do the best it can with what it has, and there will never be enough resources available to meet all the needs of the community. There is no magic answers, but we are thoughtfully spending within our means. And I walked away from that feeling very good that we don't come back and ask or implement unnecessary fees for our residents just to try to find ways to maintain the current service levels. So then the other takeaway was that Counselor Huckabee and I went to collaborating across systems to improve behavioral health. And she touched on that when we were talking about this proposal for using of opioid funds. And one of the takeaways I got from that was someone who was on the panel from Youth Era. And I would encourage all of you to Google that, because basically I didn't realize this connection until Counselor Cook and I were meeting yesterday, and she said, "Have you ever heard of Clackamas Drop?" And I said, "Oh my gosh." And I pulled out my notes from League of Oregon City, and I said, "Is it the Youth Era?" And she says, "Yes. Clackamas Drop is located in Milwaukee, and it's staffed by peer support specialists who are committed to helping young adults empower themselves and successfully transition to adulthood. They can also train families to provide peer support when services are not available. It's creating a safe space for people to go to." And we got to thinking, wouldn't this be great if we could provide this at the community center? And so attending this session and realizing that there is a high demand for adolescents, gender affirming care, and that there's a lot of things that Gladstone can do without having to invest a lot of money into that. So those were the 2 sessions that I would like to highlight from the League of Oregon Cities Conference.
Thank you, Administrator Betts. Counselor Huckabee.
I'm going to try not to piggyback too much on that. And unfortunately, I did not write out everything as eloquently as Counselor Garlington did. So good job. So let's see, there's a couple of things. I think that I probably do want to start off with systems to improve behavioral health access. Unknowingly to me, I walked in and there was a mental health provider doctor that works for my company. And I've corresponded with him via email, but I've never actually met him because he doesn't live locally. And he was the presenter for that particular breakout session. And it was fantastic. It was so great. There were so many good insights that we were able to pick up. I will say that one of my notes was to connect with Martin Rafferty, which is the president or CEO of Youth Era. So it was very cool to hear your connection and just how everything ties in together with our partnerships. That's so great. A couple of things. One that I really highlighted in there was, and I actually think it was Martin who discussed creating peer support like adolescents within the school. So these kids who from however they are chosen, get a little more specialized training on how to support their peers at their school, whether that be, mental health or, depression, just kind of somebody that they have to go to. And I think it was him, he made a statement that said, if a teenager has 4 influential adults in their life, there's a 98% of graduation. Just 4 influential adults. So that's really important. It was great. I really enjoyed that one. I will say that Bill Strickland was amazing. And I'm not going to go into it too much other than he saw a need in his community and he never took no as the answer. Never. He just proceeded and he got it done. And it's unimaginable what he did over there. It's kudos to him. Let's see. I was able to go on a tour down there. I only went on one, and I did the tour of the country fair, which is in Veneta, correct? I mispronounce that sometimes. It's massive. I don't know if anybody's been to the country fair, but this is you have? Okay. This is amazing. The square footage that it covers, I mean, thousands and thousands, like tens of thousands of volunteers that go into this, and how the program works with Public Works for the city, who works for the city. And they used to not talk, and it was very tumultuous from what I understand. And so they finally decided to create a partnership, and they're all talking together, and everybody looks forward to this now. And the city has created their own camping ground for people to go to. So there's security and people are safe. And I'm going to go this year. So I would encourage everybody to check it out. I think that's it that I have for this. Just thank you. I made some great connections. I was able to spend a significant of time with some leaders from Siletz, Oregon, which is very, very small. We in Gladstone think we're very small. We're siloed and we're all entrenched in what's going on in our community. And then we are able to meet these other leaders from other cities. And you're like, oh my gosh, we are just kicking, what over here. We are doing so well. And that's all to a dedicated staff and leaders and council. So I just thank all of you guys for talking the talk up here. And then once these meetings end, walking the walk. So thank you.
Well, thank you, all 3 of you, for representing us so well, for coming back with some positive ideas, some good perspective on where we are compared to other cities. We're not out there to compare ourselves, but when you find that we're doing some things better and that we are in better position to do other things in the future than some cities, it feels pretty good to be a part of that. So thank you for bringing that message back to us. Do we have any business carried forward?
Mayor, Council Reichel has her.
Oh, Councilor Reichel, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, it's fine. I just had a quick question for Councilor Garlington. You had mentioned that you attended a session regarding showing up and being present. Which one was that? Is it listed on this?
No,
agenda
it was one of the things that one of the statements that one of the presenters had made at the one I was at the one I was at. It just kind of stuck with me, and he was Hillsborough Mayor Steve
Calloway.
Yeah.
Steve Calloway.
He's a very eloquent person. He's a great conversation leader, and you could listen to him talk for just a long time. He's just a really neat guy. So I chime in on other people's council meetings, and theirs are kind of interesting to listen to all of them talk as well. So anyway, I know, boring life.
And Steve Calloway, I think, is the current president of the League of Oregon Cities. Is that right? He
Yes.
chairs that group?
Yes.
Okay. So, and Hillsborough out to the west.
Yes.
Okay.
He told me he would really like to meet you in person, by the way.
Me?
Yes, you.
We have met, I think, a couple times at Metropolitan Mayor's consortium, but we're usually seated on opposite sides of the
Oh,
room
maybe
and
that's
have
why.
such a tight agenda that we don't get to talk too much.
I see.
But I'll seek him out the next time because he has offered great things in that setting as well.
Gave me his card for you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
For all the counselors up here, I just want to say real quick that if you go to the League of Oregon Cities website and you click on the conference, all of the handouts for all of the breakout sessions and everything are in there. So they're great tools. I think there's some recordings as well. Is that right, Administrator Betts?
There might be in the future, but I even think our city attorney was on a panel, so you're gonna want to check that out too.
What panel were you on, Attorney Jacobs?
I was speaking as part of the housing breakout, the all-day housing thing, and we did a session with a mayor of Bend, the mayor of Gold Beach, and a staff employee from Hillsborough on camping ordinances and houselessness issues. So
Very good. That's still in the news this week because I think Portland's facing some blowback on there. So yeah. All right. Any business carried forward, Administrator Betts?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. This is time for business from the audience. Did we have anyone request to speak or submit a
We
card
did
tonight?
not.
Okay. All right. No business from the audience. We move on to business from the council. This is the opportunity for council members to bring up items, report on your liaison connections or other activities that you've done. So let's see, let's start with our Zoom attenders. Councilor Roberts, I will call on you first. Anything to share tonight? You are coming to us from Texas, I understand. Austin, Texas, is that right?
Georgetown, Texas. Thank you, Mayor.
Georgetown, Texas.
That's right, visiting family. I don't have anything to say. Otherwise, I'd just like to thank Councilors Garlington, Huckabee, as well as Administrator Betts for those fantastic updates. And much like you said, Mayor, representing our city in such a bright light and bringing back that information from other cities that kind of gives us an idea of where we are in the race. So I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Reichel.
Okay, so hopefully I'll keep, this should be quick. Just wanted to share an update from the Parks and Rec Board. We had our meeting last night. There was a presentation done by Metro, their Parks and Nature Director and their Deputy Director, and talking about a bond that was approved back in 2019 and kind of how Gladstone can utilize that bond funding. There are very specific criteria, but we have about $850,000 to invest in our natural spaces here in the city, which is a huge boon for us. And so the Parks Board is beginning the process of kind of deciding where they would advise that we could potentially use those funds. And it's called the Local Share Program, if anyone wanted to look it up. The reason that I had asked you, Councilor Garlington, about that showing up situation is that a big piece of the application process or the approval process for the projects that we determine is a community engagement portion. So trying to find ways to really reach out to the varying groups within our community that utilize our park systems is kind of a big thing that we need to focus on in order to prove that, we are servicing the community through this bond. So that was the biggest part of the meeting. I would also say update on the Meldrum Play structure. It's been ordered, it's on its way, expecting it to be delivered end of November and hopefully, fingers crossed, installed by the end of the year. So that's all that I've got.
Councilor Alexander has a question for you.
Was
Sure.
the guy speaking from the parks, was his name John?
Yes, John Blasher.
So he's the one that came and
director.
took our tour that day with us, with you and I, that was him. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Yeah, he was very informative. It was great. The whole thing was great.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Reichel. Councilor Cook.
Yeah, just really quickly. want to appreciate Administrator Betts, Councilors Garlington and Huckabee for going to League of Oregon Cities. Thank you so much for representing us so well. It's a long event. It's multiple days. So, you know, it's not an insignificant amount of time to volunteer. Which just two kind of things to add to the discussion that you guys had from League of Oregon Cities. You know, I happened to have a conversation with two teachers at Gladstone in Gladstone School District. And something, one of my questions to them was, what is one of your biggest challenges right now teaching? And they both told me the same thing, which was after the pandemic, the social emotional learning that kids are dealing with. They're dealing with a lot of emotional and social challenges, some of which is just from being an adolescent or a pre-adolescent, and some of which is exacerbated by the pandemic. So I'm really excited, you know, hearing that you guys got to learn about Youth Era, Clackamas Drop. I think there's, you know, we are uniquely situated having our community center right across the street from the high school. I think there's definitely opportunity for us to, you know, learn some lessons from how our neighboring communities have served their students. And I'm really excited to just continue that conversation. And then Councilor Garlington, I think something you brought up is something that I've been thinking about too, which is, you know, these elected official positions are unpaid, which I think one unintended result of that is that, you know, not everybody has equal opportunity to participate in representative government, right? Not everybody can work for free, what you end up with is often you have, you know, disproportionately wealthier and older people who have the flexibility to volunteer in this way. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just what happens. I don't know that there's an answer to that. I think that we do a good job of, you know, attempting to represent everybody within our community, even though we're not necessarily a representative cross-section of our community. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't think there's an answer. I don't think there's something that we can do actively, but I think it's, I really enjoyed hearing you talk about the impact of that. And I think it's something for us to think about and make sure that we're always asking ourselves the question of, are we doing everything we can to represent everyone within our community? So thank you for that.
All right, Councilor Alexander.
First of all, I do want to sincerely say congratulations on your win. And what you just spoke on, that's sort of what I wanted to speak on tonight. After the election, I had a few people come up and sort of confront me almost. I was called a hypocrite and our council was called the hypocrite. We were hypocritical because we had chances, they said, to get diversity on our council, but we didn't. And now 7 white people sit up on the council, and how are we getting represented by these other people, you know? And so I didn't have an answer for them. I just told them, you know, when I come visit your city, we'll see what, you know, it looks like. And I don't have an answer. So I don't know if people don't understand it or what's going on, but you know, if we sit up here and talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and then we don't support the LGBTQ or the Hispanic or the, you know, Native American, if we don't support that and get that voice up here on our council, then they say that we're just up here talking about it and not doing it. So just be mindful of that. And if anyone approaches you, be prepared and have an answer maybe. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think a good question that we can ask ourselves as we move forward is, have we done everything we can to remove barriers to participation? And I think something that you mentioned, Councilor Garlington, was, when are our meetings? And, you know, it's a late night, like, you know, we're here late at night. But, you know, thank goodness, I know there are other, you know, Clackamas County has their meetings during the day, which means that when they have their open, you know, feedback from the audience, there's a lot of people who just don't have the opportunity to have their voice heard. And so I think there are some things that we're doing right, like having these late meetings, which keep us up late, but allow for more engagement and participation. So I think, you know, continuing to ask ourselves the question, have we removed every barrier possible? You know, we can't be responsible for the outcome, but we can make sure that we are responsible for a fair process and fair access. And I think that I'm glad we're having the conversation.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because like I said, you know, like I told them, I said, listen, there's a democracy, we voted. So if DEI is that important to the community, Well, the community speaks when they vote. So if they voted for the white person, then it's obviously not a big concern to them when they're casting their votes. So they either don't know or I don't know what their thought process is. It's just that we were, I got told a few times, 7 white people on the council talking about DEI. I said, okay, thank you. So that's just so, if there's any way we can change it or do it, or, I don't know, does that mean does that mean you have to support somebody, or do you take the person who's best for the job? Like you had 6 months experience, so you'd be best for the job. Do we just say, well, she'd be best for the job, but we have to have someone who's Native American or Hispanic, or see what I mean? I don't know. I don't even understand diversity and inclusion. What are we trying to do with that? And that's why I think it does need to be a conversation, and more people need to know about it and figure it out.
And I might just add that at your November 28th work session, we're going to continue to have that conversation on diversity, equity, inclusion as a council goal.
Okay, perfect. Great timing.
All right. Thank you. Councilor Garland, did you have anything to add?
Well, of course. I just like to say, first of all, thank you for the conversations. It helps to have them. I think it's good to know where people sit, where people are thinking, and just open us all up to thinking a different way, or thinking, or knowing that what we're thinking is the same thing that somebody else is thinking. Believe it or not, there's a lot that goes with that. And so thank you for that. So I would just like to say that Friday, November 10th was Veterans Day. And on October 31st of this year, President Biden made a proclamation on National Veterans and Members Families Month. And it simply states that now, therefore, I, Joseph Biden, President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim November 2023 as National Veterans and Military Family Month. I call upon the people of the United States to honor veterans and military families with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And I know the city of Gladstone has done a remarkable job, mostly the school district, every year honoring those that have served us over the years. I know that the flagpole has names of people that have served in the military on their placards. And I do appreciate that a lot as a military family. So I want to say, to extend my sincere gratitude to the staff of Gladstone for organizing another great event in the Halloween festival. The police department, the fire department, the city staff, the people of Gladstone, the people who showed up, all of you, thank you very much. Truly, thank you very much. A quick reminder that if your leaf pile will fit in your yard debris can, please use that. Leaves blow around and into our storm drains, and it's not a good thing. So again, if your leaf pile is smaller than your yard debris can, please use it. Election day, as others have said, thank you to the voters who turned out. The council doesn't have to reconfigure any parts of our police and fire budget, and that does make us very happy. And we have a permanent council member now in Councilor Cook, so congratulations. I attended the school board meeting last week with Mayor Milch. Really interesting. They're doing a lot of good work, lots of good conversation, so that was really interesting to hear. I did attend the Parks Board meeting last night. I wanted to hear from the gentleman coming to speak. He did have a lot of good things to say, and I was super excited in the direction that the Parks Board is going, as is Councilor Reichel. A reminder to those who are currently serving to reapply on our boards and commissions, to reapply if you'd like to keep your seat. And for those that are thinking about applying, just apply. There's an opening for you, there's a spot for you, and we want to have a lot more people in our city come and be part of our city. And what's the date that those applications need to be in, Administrator Beth?
December 5th, and we will bring them to you December 12th.
Okay, so December 5th. We need to put that up there. December 9th, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the holiday market at the community center. It was a great event last year, and absolutely packed, but I'm optimistic it will be just as good, if not better. The Kiwanis will be serving breakfast from 8 to 10 with Santa Claus. And then the big event, the holiday tree lighting at 5 o'clock. Again, that's December 9th. I want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving, and may the blessing of gathering with others be with everyone. I truly mean that. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Huckabee.
Thank you. Sorry, it's a little warm in here. Counselor Alexander, that is so much to unpack. And we do not have the time tonight at all. It is.
That's why we got next 2 weeks.
Yes, it's so much to unpack, and I'm glad the discussions are happening, and I would encourage to push back a little and just ask, what are they doing for their DEI training and education? And because it's more than just skin color. It's so much more than just skin color. Okay, just a couple of things from the reports, department head reports. Darren is not here, and I had a couple of things for him, but Administrator Betts said I could ask Chief Schmerber about one. In the Public Works report on 6-22, it's evident in this report that there's some frustrations with bathrooms, and I want to know, my question was going to be to Darren, but I want to know what you think will help solve this problem. There's a problem, clearly. And we keep cleaning it up,
My first impression is people need to behave themselves, but that's the difficult way to go about it. We have research camera systems to on the outside. Obviously, we can't put cameras on the inside.
Right.
So that makes it even more difficult in storage, and then cloud, what systems you use. We've talked about it. I've worked with IT on considerations on a couple different camera systems. But more importantly, I would ask that also if people are aware of somebody bragging about damaging bathrooms and so on, please come forward and provide that information to us. I remember at one point we put information out on our monthly report that we're tired of the bathrooms being damaged and such. And it seemed like the community took it upon themselves because we went a time period where it didn't occur. So I think one is we need to make sure, one, we're sharing the information, and two, and then see what kind of systems we can put out there. But I would ask the community, I would ask the community to come forward also and make sure that those people that are doing it are held accountable. There's a lot of different ways of accountability.
Yeah.
So.
Do we, by chance, because I would assume for accountability, you kind of need expedient notification something's happening.
Yes.
Do we have like a number down there that people can be like, hey, like I was here an hour ago and it wasn't here, or just something where they can
people just call 911. And for vandalism, that's what it's for. If you're blowing up toilets or damaging vandalism and so on, and you see it's occurring, call 911 so we can get there. If not, call the non-emergency number, and we have that posted on our website. So I believe that information is posted on our website. So if something in progress and you need something done, 911 is your best help for us to get there even more quickly. Otherwise, it's a non-emergency.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Halloween. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun. I was able to enjoy the whole evening down there. It was great. My favorite booth, if you will call it, was our Public Works one. I don't know if you guys all saw it. It was some spooky little blow up trees, and then the what do you call the piece of machine? It's in here somewhere. Excavator or something, was dressed up as like a big monster, and you had to stick your hands in there with teeth, and it took a little bit of encouraging for my 16-month-old granddaughter to put her hand in there to get her reward. But it's a life lesson, and grandma showed her, and then she did it, and she was happy with all the candy she got. But that was by far my favorite. It was so nice to see so many families down there, and even returning families from last year. So in Gladstone, rain or shine, kids are down in Portland Avenue on Halloween, period. It was awesome. Let's see here. I am not going to,
You didn't let her eat all that candy.
Well, she doesn't live with me, so I highly doubt that my son let her eat all that candy. She doesn't have enough teeth to eat all of it. I was going to mention the winter market, but thank you, Councilor Garlington. You got that. And then, okay, liaison duties. I'm going to go there. So of my official liaison duties, we didn't have our traffic and safety committee last time, and we did not have our community center meeting either. So I don't have a lot of updates there for you. They are coming up, so I'll update you next time. In October, I was appointed and voted into the it's called LEDIC over in Clackamas County. It's the Leaders for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council. And the purpose of that council is to advise the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners on items related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we had our first meeting, and I'm also happy to say fellow resident Gabriella is in the audience, and she is also on the LEDIC committee. So thank you for volunteering and stepping up to represent Gladstone. It's so needed, and I appreciate that. Again, walking the walk. I love it. The first meeting, it wasn't a really heavy agenda. It was really nice to have County Administrator Gary Schmidt there to kind of discuss what's going on with the EOI office, because there's some rumbling over there, and what his outlook is on it, and where the focus should be. Should like this go to HR, or I don't recall the other department. So just kind of a robust conversation about what do you guys think is, because that's what we do. We advise, right? Whether he takes it or not, or the county does, that's fine. So that was really nice. Martha Schrader was also there, and she provided some good insight, just kind of like, what the board's thinking and kind of how she's feeling things out. But it was a good first introduction meeting, I would say. I hope Gabriella thinks as well. So we have another one coming up. I'm so excited for that. And then finally, I just want to give a shout out to Gladstone High School. They last week put on a play called Trap. It was Thursday night and Friday night. So I went and attended, and it was awesome. It was very well put out. It was kind of a mind boggler. I encourage you guys to look it up. It's a big play also. The students did great. All of the support workers did great. The teachers did phenomenal. And I highly recommend people going out to support the, theater part of our high school.
All right, thank you. We've mentioned a couple times about community engagement and diversity on the council with relation to the, who's available to attend and participate in meetings. I may be wrong. I'm guessing that right now in our city council, we have a council member in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. So age-wise, having evening meetings and not being paid is not restricting us too much along that line. So that's a positive thing. And I want to express appreciation again for our advisory committees that we have at the city level, whether it's budget, parks, traffic safety, community center, and there are need to add even more, I think, in the future. This is a way to involve citizens and to get them excited, and maybe to gain some of the experience that might lead them to serve in other capacities in the future. So I thank you for reminding us of the need to reapply if you want to continue to serve, or to apply for the first time if you're out there new and haven't served yet. I want to say, through my contacts with the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium and the County C4 group, where I get together with other mayors of other cities and people, we're tackling some of these countywide issues, particularly the issue of potential tolling of our freeway. Taking them on very straightforward. And we are fortunate here in Gladstone that our two representatives, our state representative, Anessa Hartman, and our state senator, Mark Meek, are both in significant leadership positions regarding this particular tolling issue right now. And during this interim session that they have with the legislature, they're hearing from experts and staff on issues that will impact what we do in the future on this issue. Senator Meek chairs a committee, a finance-related committee that last week had a presentation from somebody looking at all the ways that the state funds its transportation system. I didn't know this until last week. For more than 2 decades, we have had a pilot program in paying for your automobile costs through a voluntary program of vehicle miles traveled. And it's a way for the state to sort of experiment with that and find out whether that would be an alternative system to the limited use of gas taxes and weight taxes on trucks and some of the other things. And one of the other things that happens across the state is there's a process by which they have to make sure that there's equity in terms of whether the vehicles that damage the roads the most or cause the most requirement for maintenance of our roads are paying in proportion to that. And so they have to look at what people who drive individual vehicles pay and what people who drive big transportation trucks pay, and make sure that everybody's kind of doing their fair share. And for many years, they thought it was pretty equitable along the way, and those are beginning to diverge. They say that cars are not paying their fair share and trucks are paying a little bit too much. And so they're going to have to rethink how they do that. But this is part of these complex processes that they have at the state level for deciding these things. And they're looking to tolling now as a possible other source of income to help fund the Oregon Department of Transportation. But I'm hoping that our representatives will encourage this ongoing conversation to look at other alternatives to tolling. Tolling works in some kinds of states, but most of the Western United States, you don't see too much of it. And I think we can be creative in finding some good ways to adequately fund our transportation system, because it's very important to our communities, but to do it without the need for the expensive infrastructure of that tolling would require. The gantries, the transponders in the cars, the computerized billing systems, all that stuff. Maybe if we switch to a vehicle miles traveled system, that might work as well. But our representatives are looking into it and working hard at it, and our local mayors and staff at the county level and city levels are also advocating strongly for a deep dive into this issue and good decisions that benefit the broadest number of people. I attended the Gladstone School Board meeting last week as well. They continue to have the needs of students at the top and dealing, as you said, as you observed with, and Counselor Cook observed as well, these issues of the mental health and well-being of students, and trying to make up for the gaps that in learning that were lost during the pandemic are still at the forefront of our needs for our district. One of the great things about Gladstone is, again, unlike some of the bigger cities around us, like Portland, with the strike and the big gap in funds between what the teachers feel that the district needs and what the district says it has available to pay. Our district has met its budget. We've contracted with our teachers. We're keeping things moving forward. And I was happy to see that the Clackamas, North Clackamas School District, that a lot of our families also have a connection to, also very overwhelmingly supported their bond or their levy to keep their programs going. So some of these issues scale down better at the size of a community that we are. And I think that's part of the reason why Administrator Betts and Councillor Huckabee and Councillor Garlington went away from the League of Oregon Cities, realizing that Gladstone is doing pretty well financially and program-wise. We are making good use of the resources we have, making a positive difference in our community. There are always things that we can do better, as we heard tonight, and we are continuing to try to move in that direction. Upcoming meeting dates, we have a work session in 2 weeks from tonight at 5:30 p.m. We have our joint City Council and Gladstone School Board meeting at 5:30 p.m. on November 30th, which is a Thursday night in 2 weeks. So I will repeat, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Thank you to staff and counselors for being here tonight and sharing this. Councilor Roberts, I see a hand on the screen that I'm looking at, but that might be, that's not your, that's just, okay, that's just a, what do they call it? A cursor on the screen. All right, very good. I wanted to be sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Roberts, seconded by Councilor Huckabee. One more reminder, Our council agenda planning document is also part of tonight's agenda. If you want to look ahead, if there's an issue you're concerned about and you wonder, when is the council going to talk about it? That's the place to find out and prepare and let us know that you'd like to participate. All right, Tammy, will you call the roll on the motion to adjourn?
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander.
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Cook,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, it is unanimous. We are adjourned at 8:35 PM. Thank you.